Welcome. I'm excited to be here. Transition is kind of one of my biggest hearts. Like Sherelle said, I had actually been in transition for about 25 years and get really excited to see um, students go from that high school student to being an adult. I know it can be a very rocky stage, and as a parent, there's a lot of emotion behind it, but there's a lot of excitement too. So I'm just excited to do this and present to you what life can look like and what the options are out there. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will get this going. Let me pull that up. So, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. So let's get started. I don't want to go over time or anything and just work on this. So, what our objectives are for tonight are to have high expectations of what is possible, to be individualized center person approach. So, this is about your child um, who's becoming a youth, if not already a youth, being informed about options and resources for life after school and where to get more information. We have a plethora, a ton of resources for you. And I love what Peak does and our other parent advisors. If I don't know, I always go back to our other advisors and ask questions. So just so you're aware, we pool within ourselves as well. Know what needs to happen at the age of majority, which is 18 in the great state of Colorado, and understand the importance of natural supports. So, moving forward, some general information. Just so you know, everyone's path is going to be different. This is individualized, just like the IEP, individualized education plan. The transition will also be individualized. And better yet, the wonderful thing about this is it will be a person-centered approach. We'll talk briefly on what that transition meeting looks like and what person-centered means. All right. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. Got a little happy there with the, okay. So some of the core outcomes are self-determination and leadership, community participation, post-secondary options, computer and digital literacy, which is becoming even more important, especially with the uprise of AI, competitive employment, and disability and health management. Um, so with that in mind, we want to begin with the end. And how I explain this a lot, just like the IEP, the transition IEP, and doing that, I visualize an umbrella, and that's kind of the end goal. It's going to be hopefully big and wide and lots of information, lots of resources. But we want to break that up into bite-sized pieces so you, being the parent guardian, can understand those, like within an IEP, what are those steps to get to that big, successful overall uh, life events, work, like it says, work, play, love, health, all of those things. I'm just going to kind of work quickly through this part and just get to the self-determination. Part within that transition IEP, the biggest part is having your student there and communicating in how they communicate, best way possible of what are their goals, what are their wishes. I know it's really hard as a parent. We want certain things for our kiddos, for our children, and for our youth. And maybe we're our kids' greatest advocate, and because we hold that history. And so within that, it really giving your child the freedom to really say what they want to do, what they don't want to do. And it might take an unexpected turn sometimes. Sometimes students are really good at when they're in front of everyone else saying things that maybe we haven't heard as a parent. And so just making sure that they can advocate for themselves. And like I say, if you come to us and you're at that stage, biggest thing is that self-advocacy, teaching your kid how to self-advocate for what in whatever manner they can. So a big part is making those choices and expressing preferences. They may go against what we want as parents and stuff, and that's okay too, because like any relationship, give and take. What can we give and take? Solve problems. This is a great place to solve problems. Engage in decision making, set and attain goals, self manage and self regulate actions, self advocate, and require self awareness and self knowledge. So, even if maybe that hadn't been the main topics in former IEPs and stuff like that, it might become one of those places that we're now having to add them into that transition IEP plan. Sorry, my computer's being a little touchy. Biggest thing is that executive functioning part of the brain. It's that frontal lobe where we're making decisions. It's called, I've also heard that higher thinking, organization. I think, well, I'm starting to get midlife, and organization still can be a little thing I have to work with. So if we're honest with ourselves, we're still working on executive functionings well into our adulthood. I just read a recent study that said that doesn't even fully develop. At first, they thought it was early 20s for females, mid 20s for males. They're saying now 30s. So just be aware those might be some skills that you want the school and at home to be working on, is some of those executive functioning skills. And those affect our daily lives, day in and day out. So with that said, I don't know how many of you have been exposed to the circles. That inner circle is that most intimate circle. It's usually family and ones we love, those intimate relationships. Those are going to change a lot with your student, especially as they become an adult. And then we go into those outer circles to what's out here is those paid services. And although they look like friendships, they're really paid. So we have all of this stuff, and I'm going to go into what we offer here at the Peak is a personal networking program, and it's I got to talk to Sammy, who leads that, and we were talking about how to explain it best. We all go grocery shopping. Many of us are really good, have that executive functioning working and being like, okay, I have the list. I know what I'm going to go do. Even better is I have the grocery store memorized, and we're going to go up and down, and I know what I'm going to get. I know the price I'm going to keep. I have my coupons already. However, some of us are just going in and we're hungry, and we're just going to start picking and choosing, and we're not even thinking of a meal. We're just hungry. So we end up going home and we're hungry, and we end up opening up that grocery bag, and it's I don't know, sushi, uh, something from the produce, because we want to try to eat more healthy. So we have maybe asparagus and then a soda pop, and it's not really things we should be eating. So with that said, is personal networks comes in, and much like a grocery store, there's a lot of offerings as your child transitions from youth into adults, and it can be very overwhelming. Schools, if they're good, they're throwing out a lot of information, but that information too can be very um, just overwhelming. And where do I start? So with that personal networks program, what it is it's connecting with other people, and this is both for parent, and it's that person-centered focus. It's really about your child and having your child involved. It's just a part of it. It should be your child first, and then the parents coming back behind and saying, okay, working together. So personal networks, I will say, have your child involved. That's the pretty much like the meat and the potatoes, is the child being involved. You'll get clarity. What you do is you also connect with other parents going through, not in your shoes, but in similar situations, having questions around certain things, and how to build something, and how your child can build, just like you and me can build a framework of how we're going to be successful in life, connecting with maybe something that works really well for your child and your child enjoys. So that's the biggest part of that personal network. Just think a lot of it like a grocery store. There's a lot of offerings. Not every offering is going to work. Not every offering is your child's going to be like, not for me. That's too much. Or that doesn't mean it's not me. It's not who I am. And so it does. But there's something in there that, your child will hopefully latch onto, and it will help them become successful, help them lean more towards confidence in who they are and what they're becoming, and really getting people who now, much like those circles, comes in and supports them. And know if it's a paid support, great. If it's something that becomes a friendship, even better. And expanding their support network as well. So if you are interested in that, there's all this information. You could definitely go to, there's the website itself, but if you go to Peak Parent, our website, and go under projects, you're going to see it under there. I highly suggest checking it out, taking time. It's broken into sections. It looks like a lot. But once it's broken down, it's really not. It's going at your pace, kind of thing, going at your child's pace. So please, please, please check it out. I think it complements transition very, very well. And so let's get into that becoming an adult. So in the state of Colorado, 18 is when you become an adult. There's adult rights and responsibilities. We know that we can vote. Males will have to register for selective service. There's definitely uh, voting. And then that big thing that usually comes up in those transition meetings is the decision making. And this is that guardianship. Usually schools are like really good at saying guardianship. Really, what's happening in this whole world of transition with disabilities is decision making. And I come from a background where it definitely it's been fairly recent that we've turned to decision making. And what is supported decision making? I would highly recommend that if you're not sure what that looks like and stuff, reach out to us. We can definitely talk to you about what's the difference between guardianship and supportive decision making. And did you know that maybe guardianship is only maybe in finances, and then supported decision making can be in medical and other, I can't remember the third one right off the top of my mind. But so all of that stuff. Also, those power of attorneys, all of that stuff becomes extremely crucial at 18. Um, also, usually by the time they hit 18, there's certain confidentialities that have been put in the medical place. I believe it's like at like 13 or 14 where they talk about, well, do you want to keep this private and stuff? 18, you now are hands off with health and care rights. That's why that power of attorney and stuff and guardianship become increasingly important, especially for families who have children with those medical complexities and stuff. And just everything else that goes into that. So the other thing is also, and we'll touch on this part as well, is those adult benefits and waivers. Medicaid becomes truly, if they're not already on Medicaid, I would, if they can, I would highly recommend getting on that right away, because that's going to really help with other things like waivers and stuff. In fact, you need Medicaid in order to get waivers. So, however, then we have this whole IDEA piece, and that covers up to 21. So it's at 21, FAPE ends, free and appropriate education ends. If your child has access to transition services, it will end when they're 21. Just be aware of that. Also be aware that if your child takes the high school diploma, that also ends, FAPE ends then. So if they have access, this will be discussed hopefully before, if they have access to the transition services offered in all school districts. Um, And if not, once they receive that high school diploma, it will certainly end free and appropriate public education. Um, so, and then the other thing, sorry, I keep pushing the wrong button and I apologize. The other thing too is remember that the IEP, the reason the transition IEP is because now you're going from progress, which they'll still monitor progress, but you're now moving into access. You're moving once they EDA ends, free and appropriate public education ends. It's now no longer about entitlement. Everything under IDEA is entitlement services. At that, if they go until 21, it's now access. They have to, uh, you know, apply for things to see if they can access things. Um, Unfortunately, that comes with waiting lists, and we'll delve into that a little bit deeper. We've had some pretty major changes happen here, and as we move along, I'll talk about those. So just keep in mind, there's kind of those two phases, 18 and 21. So with that, there is adult support. IDEA goes away. It's no longer a thing that can be utilized. However, we move into what access is, and those are going to be those civil rights laws, such as Section 505, which is part of the Rehabilitation Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and their non-discrimination acts. And then there's those accommodations, which I definitely say take those accommodations that are in the IEP and pull those out and keep those. You don't know if your child, if they're going after career, or maybe they're post-secondary, or maybe education, or maybe both. Those will apply in those places. Just know that these apply to any place that receives federal funding. So public colleges, any schools that those secondary schools that are public and that receive federal funds have to adhere to 504 ADA. Now there's also that support funding stuff. I'm going to delve just quickly into DVR. That's where the biggest changes have come from. There's also going to be SSI, SSDI, if your child's not receiving those already. Medicaid. We have heard about Medicaid a lot in the news lately. Please keep an eye on it and just realize there's some things going on with it. But it is important that if I'm of the mindset, if you can access something, and if I know there's a lot of red tape sometimes with this stuff, but apply for it. Apply, get on waiting lists, apply. Um, and if you find out your child doesn't need it, then great. They can pull their name off of the waiting list and it opens up the door for someone else. But that's kind of the camp that I live in. So with IDEA, it's that for entitled to free and appropriate public education for further education, employment, and independent living. So as you transition, it's that shift of focus. Are they gonna go after secondary education? Are we looking at some kind of degree or certification? Is there employment? Uh, Being looked at, and also that independent living. Um, are they capable of living on their own, or is it going to be a situation of living maybe in your home, but as independent as possible? So, I mean, there's just a variety. It's just like that grocery store. I'll go back to that grocery store. There's just so much out there, and that you have these years between transition and 21, 18 or 21, and it goes by quick. And I know it's really scary. And that's why there's things like Peak and the programs we offer to really talk those out and figure those out between you and your student, and what's best. And let me tell you, it's not going to be perfect. There's probably going to be moments you're going to trip and oh, that was the wrong direction. And that's okay. I have personally, I have a 25-year-old still trying to figure things out in life. And that's just reality. And like I said, as adults, we're still trying to figure some things out in life. So, but the biggest, that umbrella, if we could stamp this on there, this would be what I would stamp on there. Students should be prepared to lead productive and independent adult lives to the maximum extent possible. And that's written right into the law. So just know, um, I wish we could just change that verbiage slightly with independent with interdependent. As I've gotten older, interdependency, we're all dependent to some level on each other. And so I think if we're teaching our students to be interdependent and asking for help, even at in your 40s, in your 50s, asking for help, but knowing that I can still make a choice being interdependent on people and stuff. So that's just the little tidbit I would like to change if I ruled the world. Any questions? I know that's a lot of information, but are there any questions on that piece? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So we're going to talk about post-secondary education. And we are going to stop doing that on my computer. And so some difference between high school and college is in college, I mean, college is a big, huge step. And so um, with that said, in college, students have to learn how to manage their own time and schedule. They're responsible for making sure homework's done, and that knowing that the professor's not going to say, "Hey, where's your homework?" College workload is a lot heavier, and in college, students, and this is that biggest piece, is that students must self-identify. So if you don't let people know that you have a disability, you're utilizing the, and it's called, every college has their own name, but it's that disabilities office. If you're not going there and saying, hey, look, um, I have autism, I have accommodations, I need to put those in place. Professors aren't going to adjust automatically their curriculum and stuff. So it's that big, huge self advocacy piece right from the get go, and that can really kind of lead more of those talks while they're in high school. Are they prepared to be able to do that? Um, and know that as a parent role, your legal rights have dramatically changed. And so that once again, we go back to that. What is guardianship? What is self-determination? And having those very real and sometimes hard conversations. And also know that transportation changes. In college. It's not I get free transportation. You're now having to uh, be able to take public transportation if that's an option. Knowing where you're going. So those kind of things do change. Um, so I mean, there's a whole range. I know we just talked about college, but within that, there's supported structured programs, and then those inclusive higher education programs, which I'll touch on here in a little bit. But there are additional supports that go beyond compliance. So just be aware that even though we have these inclusive higher education programs, IDEA does not exist in that world. Um, it they're trying to provide, and they've done a great job about it of providing certification, but they do not fall under IDEA. They will fall under ADA 504, and that's it. So just be aware of that going forth. But I am also a big proponent. I really support these inclusive higher education programs. They're pretty amazing. Okay, let's go here. Um, sorry, I'm working with a couple different screens here. Okay. And so that Office of Disability Services is huge. You want to make sure that your student has located that office and having those conversations with them. That because they're receiving federal funding, they have to ensure equal access to students with disabilities. Um, Students must register through the Office of Accessibility, Disability Services. Like I said, that name changes. If your student is going down that road, obviously they'll have those, much like every other student will have those times where they can go and visit the campus. That would definitely be on my checklist of making sure that they know where that office is at and just pre-connecting with them and stuff. And then those documentation requirements may vary, and that's where you've had to have your student have those conversations with them. You could definitely go and support, but remember those legal things as a parent role has changed quite a bit. And then support provided does vary. And I will be honest with you, it also varies from professor to professor. The school itself, the college itself may say, we do this, but I'm telling you right now, professors change. And does your student know what to do when a professor is being non-compliant with what they have legal rights to? So just keep that in mind as well, that it can change. I've heard stories of very old school professors who unfortunately still don't quite get it. And then you have these really amazing professors who, I got your accommodations. I can work with that. Let's start off there and just even providing the appropriate support within that. Next is those career and technical education, CTE. I love these programs. I will personally say that I've had a child take advantage of these programs. And their courses, they're usually connected with the community college, the local community college, and they provide, and I love this part, that free part of working on certification through the local community college. So, for instance, I'm over here in Greeley, Colorado. We're connected with Ames Community College. There's welding, there's healthcare, those like CNA kind of certifications, health and beauty. They just STEM is exploding, so they're offering a lot of STEM like certifications. As well. And so I would definitely take advantage of that, especially if your student is really like um, those like maybe I'm dating myself, the blue collar positions, construction, welding, just those hands-on kind of jobs. And I think leaving with in high school with certifications, sometimes it's that associate's degree type of credits. If they can do that, do that. So I would definitely, and it also, a big plus is it opens up that social circle from just in high school to now they're working typically within the community college. So not only, and it can be scary too, but they're accessing not only their peers, but possibly some older adults with experience as well. And so it can kind of open up that social circle as well, too. And I'm not saying that's first and foremost, it's education. So look at it that way. But within education, if your kid's in high school, they already have friends, opportunities, that inclusive environment that helps build those social circles. So even more so with a community college and accessing those while they're still in high school. Now we'll get into that inclusive higher education. So Colorado has this great program in. Um, if this is something that kind of is piquing some things for your child and stuff, I would definitely look them up. Look at the schools that they have. Here in Greeley, we have UNC. It's called the Gold Program. It's certification. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what the certification programs are. That would be something to talk to in about. I believe I can't even, but throughout Colorado and stuff. Keep in mind, they're probably going to be living on campus. Though I know the one exception right offhand is Arapahoe Community College, that obviously being a community college, they don't have the housing there. But all of these other programs, your student will be living on campus. So it's thinking kind of in terms of what loosely use the term general education student has access to. So does your child and stuff. Um, uh, that would be also one that I would be talking about because there's so many steps there. I don't know all of the exact steps, but there's ties to DVR as well. And that's one thing I want to delve into just a little bit further because of some of the changes that have happened recently there. With that said, are there any questions about those education, post-secondary education programs? I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. And just understanding that your role has now changed dramatically. So this can be overwhelming, but it can also be one of the best things that happened. So, any questions? Okay, let's move on. We're going to go to employment and self-employment. Also, another thing I get really excited about. I'm so amazed at the creativity of youth. It's just amazing. So I'll just leave that there. But we're going to go into the range of supports for employment. So once again, this is that place where ADA 504 are there. That's why I say take those accommodation pieces from the IEP, hold on to them because they will apply to the workplace. ADA becomes extremely crucial as well. DVR, we'll get to the slide. No, things have changed there. So I will delve into that. And then we get those all of those Medicaid waivers and supports that can definitely help your student become successful. And so those pieces all play a place. Know that, let me pull this up really quick so I can see it really well. With intellectual and developmental disabilities, being connected to the case management agency, not that it wasn't important as a child, but it becomes, I think, a little bit more crucial as an adult. And then having HICPUF, the Division of Healthcare, Finances, and all that. Important when they're young, even I would say crucial as adults. If that is a disability your child has, please get connected. Contact us. We can certainly get you connected to the right people to do that. So some key considerations are, what is that goal? What's that career goal? You know, I think as kids, oh, I want to be a doctor. And I'll give you my own personal. I wanted to be a doctor. You know what stopped it? Biology in high school, and we had to dissect creatures. I was like, nope, I'm not going down that path. And so I chose, instead of brain surgery, to actually, as you heard, go into psychology. And I love, like I said, I love listening to people and seeing what's going on in their brain, but I just don't want to operate on their brain. So just like us, career goals are probably going to change, and that's normal. I think just really seeing what your child is, their talents, their gifts, their abilities, and giving our parently wisdom and knowledge and stuff can help guide and direct them. In high school, I'm a big proponent. Maybe taking as many extracurricular and different the arts, the music, the physical classes, those kind of things, and just kind of getting a smattering of different things to know what you like and what you don't like, kind of things. Evaluating training options so that there could be support in the workplace. That's why it's kind of that transition. If your child qualifies for those transition service, that age 18 to 21, is a great place. Learning, part of that whole transition services is learning how to attain job skills, getting job skills and stuff like that. And that can continue past that. It's just no longer an entitlement service. It becomes an access service. So considering those supports of services, and those you will have to meet them possibly through DVR, possibly a Medicaid waiver, and understanding that. Also, it's really good to understand the Americans with Disabilities Act. When you guys receive this PowerPoint, you can click on those. Here, it's actually here housed in UNC is, and I apologize, I can't remember the thing, but they specifically um, tell people about what the rights are under ADA and stuff like that. And also, the biggest thing is, and this has just been an ongoing thing since I first kind of got delved into disabilities 20, almost 30 years ago, is if I receive this kind of income, it's going to affect my disability benefits. So kind of having to weigh options. I think this will always be an issue. I've never seen where it's not been an issue. We always hope for the best, and I would love to see the day when someone with a disability can work full time and it's not going to uh, plow into their disability benefits. But do know that there is some things out there that can take away from that as well. We'll briefly talk on like ABLE accounts and stuff that can kind of override that as well. So employment first. Colorado is an employment first state, which is wonderful. This actually happened, oh, it's been fairly recent, but it's really good. It does, they, like their statement says here, envision a culture of inclusive, meaningful, competitive employment for all disabilities. In the days of old, they're not going to sit in a warehouse doing the same work over and over again and getting paid not even minimum wage. Those days are long gone, thank goodness. So this is where you're going to get to know your kid really well, what you like, what you don't like. And so just integrative. Know that it needs to be competitive, integrated employment, and that you should be earning at least minimum wage. So none of this piecework that they used to, and these conditions where you get paid per piece, like 19 cents per piece, none of that should be existing. I have not heard of it anytime, so I know that in Colorado it has completely gone away. So minimum wage is the bare minimum of expected pay. Also, I am a big proponent of, I really like, you've seen a lot of the coffee shops, those kind of things. And most of them, it's not necessarily an end all be all. This is not the end of employment. This is actually, I feel like it's a place where they're honing those work skills. And just like you and me, building up our resume to move further up the ladder. Hopefully, if that is what your child envisions, is that's great. I'm a barista, but that's not my end game. I want to be a barista right now so that I can hone my social skills. I can hone customer service skills. Maybe even having the opportunity of understanding how to run your own store. I know plenty of people who have started their own business. Actually, up in Estes Park, there's a wonderful place. And I did talk to Sherelle earlier today. I have some brain fog going on, but they do now have another store in North Carolina, and it was because their son wanted to be self-employed. And so not only does he have his own store, which his parents support him fully in that, they run kind of the more business side, but they have welcomed in other people, and it's typically who the artisans that I've met, and he is an artisan, have had intellectual developmental disabilities, but they all sell their stuff at this store. It's, I believe, the shops in Estes Park, third floor. Check it out. It's wonderful if you haven't. Um, so I really enjoy that. And I briefly got to talk to mom, and this was a couple years back, and just kind of his journey to that. And it did start with supported employment. And he understood, I there's just some skills I have to hone in order to get to this place. So just amazing things that I'm seeing pop up all over Colorado. It's amazing. Just just another conversation I had earlier today. Be aware that the least um, employed population are people with intellectual developmental disabilities. And the data proves that not only are they happier when employed in an integrated employment place, that it also helps everyone else there as well. Their productivity increases, their enjoyment at the job increases. So there is real data to show that if you as a person with a disability are employed, you're not only helping yourself, you're helping others too. That's amazing. So just be aware of that. Definitions: supported employment is that model that is designed for people with those more significant disabilities who need ongoing support services. Sometimes you'll see this here in Greeley. There's a couple of restaurants I really like to go to, and I always see uh, um, people uh, that are in day programs, whatever, and they have a support person. They're working on those work skills, and that's waiver funding. So it truly is important if your child has those specific disabilities, intellectual developmental disabilities, to get on those and stuff, because that's what's going to help them learn and open up doors. Unfortunately, we're still at a place where sometimes employers don't see um, the benefits of this. And so it opens up doors when they know that someone's coming in to support your son or daughter with those work skills and stuff. So customized employment is those processes that flexibly blend strategy, service supports, and funds to facilitate employment outcomes for job seekers with complex needs and the negotiated employment relationships. This is through the division of Voc Rehab, and this also can, and sorry, um, let me get this really quick. Sorry. Uh, work hand in hand with Division of Voc Rehab. Um, so with that, you have those. Let me make sure I didn't. I feel like I skipped. No, I didn't. Um, I'm going to drop this in since we are talking a lot about Division of Voc Rehab. Um, right now, there is a wait list. Recently, I believe it was the end of February, DVR, due to lack of funding, had to move into wait lists. So the minute you can apply for DVR, a Division of Voc Rehab, I highly recommend doing so. Um, uh, and get on there. What they're doing it is they're doing it based on when the application is received and the level of supports that your child youth will need in the workplace. So it's crucial. I'm telling everyone, get signed up for DVR. Extremely crucial right now. We're hoping at one point it no longer is a wait list, but there is one right now. And so hopefully by the time they're at that 18 or 21 age, and we're looking at more getting into the workforce, that their name is at that top. So please contact talk to your school, obviously, but contact the Division of Voc Rehab through your county, um, and also contact us. Please contact us if you're at a loss and need to know what direction or who you need to connect to. So with that said, Job accommodations. Remember that workplaces are under ADA. Uh, Title One. You can look up the titles. You can also contact if you go back to the ADA stuff. That it goes directly to that website and the contact information, or call us. So if you want to understand your students' rights even more, so you can help advocate for them, perfect. Reasonable accommodations. And I hate when they use these really broad terms, but you got to remember that it kind of falling back, although IDA doesn't play a role anymore, individualized. So a reasonable accommodation um, might be taking that accommodation of uh, having maybe those notes uh, that they were getting in school. Well, maybe having those notes for the workplace, coming in and having that checklist of what needs to get accomplished. So, and that's definitely the conversation that where especially self advocacy comes up, and having your child know what are your accommodations at school, because those are going to apply to your adult life. Um, and it cannot change the essential function of the job. So unlike where you may have had your student may have had modifications and IEP to curriculum, that will not happen in the workplace. There's going to be, usually you come in when you got the job, here's your list of duties, or sometimes they'll even tell you beforehand, before you even interview, here's the job description. And most of those are pretty essential functions that need to happen within that job. And that can help determine if that's the job right for you or not. They Work doesn't have to change the essential function of the job. It still needs to be accomplished. So they might butt up against that. And maybe that place is not the place of employment for your child student, and maybe the perfect place. And oh, we just have to put in this reasonable accommodation here. Um, I think of disabilities such as vision disabilities, low vision blindness. The screen needs to be bigger. Can I please get a bigger screen for my computer so I can uh, see what's going on? Those are definitely accommodations, and they're going to be, although they're individualized, they're also going to be reasonable with that big, huge, broad term. And no undue hardship. So if we go back to ADA, if this is a big thing, is access to the building. Is, is someone who has physical impairments and stuff, can they access the building? And maybe it's that conversation, hey, there needs to be a ramp put in here so I can at least get into the building. So some of those bigger ideas, but ADA, that's definitely a big one. Is just accessing to get into your workplace. I know that's a pretty broad one and stuff, and you keep that stuff in mind as well. So there's that job accommodation network, JAN, and that is a service of the U.S. Department of Labor. Please take a look at that. It's explains so much and more of kind of the minutia of the little things, those little tidbits. I like to talk broad terms, and they can definitely kind of narrow it down for what your child has access to. And then it goes on, and we go on. Oh, yep, Rocky Mountain ADA. Yeah, that's the one up here in at UNC in Greeley. A great place. I've had the privilege of talking to him a few times. A wealth of knowledge there. I am amazed, and so just a good place to reach out to. State vocational rehabilitation, DVR, that big thing I'm talking about. So these are those things that the paperwork they're gonna ask for is the documentable disability, such as physical, mental, learning disability, autism, IDD, the whole gamut. Does the disability create problems with getting, doing, or keeping and advancing in a job? So that's going to be that other conversation. And in fact, now because they're a waiting list, they're going to definitely be looking at that and seeing what levels of support your student needs. So when they receive it, and depending on the level of support your son or daughter needs, is going to put you uh, on that. Well, you're definitely going to be on that wait list, but those two things are going to put you somewhere on that wait list. And that's why I say get in right now. Even if you don't know the full extent of kind of getting, doing, or keeping those jobs, or advancing, it might move up and stuff like that by the time they're ready to get into the workplace. And VR services are needed in order to work successfully. So do they need that support? Very simple. Do they need support in the workplace? Is it a simple thing of having access to technology in order to access their job? Is it getting maybe some support at the front end to understand that this is step one, step two, step three, and working in compliance, working with maybe a waiver service, or maybe working with a support person from DVR. Sometimes those are interchangeable, and based on disability, they're not. It's DVR only. So just be aware. Wait list, please. Big red flashy lights. Get them signed up ASAP. So some school districts or BOCES. I'm going to apologize. My daughter just walked in. I am working. I will talk to you later. They partner with DVR, or they do have programs like SWAP. If your school district has a SWAP program, please invite them to the transition meeting, even if they're not necessarily at that level of SWAP. It's where they're, while they're in high school, they're working in different jobs with that support of SWAP there. If you have access to that in your school district, please invite them to the table at the transition meeting, just to start working on those job skills. And these are usually kids who don't have access to the transition services based on disability. So if not, definitely have DVR um, at that transition meeting as well. And that way you can start talking about what skills can, while they're at school, can they utilize and get all the entitled services before it becomes access services. Take advantage of it as much as you can while they're in high school, and possibly transition services. Those pre-employment transition services is if you're uh, and it's that eligibility determination, much like extended school year. Sometimes your kids qualify for that, sometimes they don't. Transition services very much is that eligibility determination. Not every student with a disability is eligible for transition services. However, if they are, please take advantage of it. This is where they're going to learn. They're going to do job exploration, work-based learning experiences, some counseling for enrolling into college, readiness for the workplace, and instructions on that big, huge piece, self-advocacy. Oh, my accommodations. I know exactly what my accommodations are. Or, man, my accommodation's really big, so I know that I'm going to go ahead and keep it where I can access it when I am in the workplace, when I'm having those interviews and stuff, and self-identifying that I do have a disability, those kind of conversations as well. So huge piece. You can definitely be working on with your child right now. I work with, as you guys just saw, my 5-year-old on self-advocacy skills, and as your child matures and stuff, that they can voice what their wants and needs are, what they want in life. Truly important skill. So then we go into those DVR, VR services, into an individual plan for employment. So this is what DVR comes up with. And those things are going to be very specific services that are necessary and appropriate to reach those job goals. So that big term again, appropriate. And there is an expected timeline as well, and who will provide. So kind of like an IEP, you're going to have the goal, you're going to have a timeline, in which they're going to receive that, or the expected timeline of when to begin and to end services so that they've progressed, and who will provide those, and how, and then those little steps. How are we going to progress towards that goal? And that they're measuring those steps. Obviously, you can't say that you've completed a goal when there's no data. And this is exactly what it is. It's data collection to say we can end, we're going to end this service because we see that they have accomplished the goal. And so it just in descriptions of everyone's responsibility. So if it's DVR is now having a support person go in, we're going to talk about when they're going to start with your student, when they're going to end with your student. What is the goal? Why is that support person there? Why does your student need that support person there? They're going to actually name who's going to do that. That support person is going to be with you 5 days a week. We're going to taper off and expect to end in 3 months, whatever, 6 months, whatever. And then there'll be someone who's like, oh, and on top of that, we also have this goal of there's going to be technology that can be provided and stuff. So you're going to have your tech person, and hopefully they're working with your student, much like how it was with an IEP. If there's technology, someone's working with them how to utilize the technology. It's IPEs are very similar to IEPs. Just remember that it's access, it's not entitlement. Self-employment.
Debbie, I'm going to interrupt you real quick because we have 2 minutes left. I'm answering questions in the chat. So I'm like, we don't have time, but I want to answer them. But
Okay.
we're at two
Please go
minutes.
to this website for self-employment. Amazing website. And like I said, I've seen so many people with disabilities start their own business and truly successful. Everything from film, artwork, whatever. I mean, there's a whole gamut out there. I did provide not only the work centers. This WC is for rural communities. If you are in Estes Park, please reach out to this. They're actually out of Broomfield, but please reach out to them. It's for specifically rural communities, that WCRA. Age of majority, 18. Remember, 18 is a big one, and having those independent living things as well. Least restrictive environment. It's same when they become adults. The reality is usually our kids don't want to live with us for the rest of their lives. And there's so many options out there. Supported living, on those waivers, supported living, you can have someone go in and check in and make sure that they're taking their medications, the house is clean. Do they need to work on those skills? Kind of things. We talked about those before. Adult services and funding. So does your child need maybe a day program for part of their living situation? Great socially, and some PASAs do provide employment opportunities that can build into other things. Financial planning, that goes back into, there's that ABLE account, and if you're interested in that, please contact us as well. Also that supported decision making, guardianship, and you can actually kind of mix them as well. So just be aware of that. It's not one or the other. Independent living centers. There's these places that get people connected to mobility, meals, computer skills, all kinds of things. And they're all throughout. There's different regions that can help you. Please reach out to us. Transition. I've been talking about the transition meeting the whole entire time. If you have further questions on that transition meeting, please contact us on what that should look like and who should be there. And with that said, I'm going to end there because I don't want to take a lot of your guys' time as well. If you do have questions, we have four parent advisors right now. And we would love to have a much lengthier conversation. It can be very overwhelming, but it can be surprising and in a good way. And I think you really learn a lot about your child and your youth while going through these last remaining years of their primary schooling. So please contact us. I love talking transition, as you can tell. I get excited for it, but as a parent, I realize it's a little kind of scary. So I thank every one of you guys for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Please reach out to us. Thank you.